Today we're making an Acerglyn.
Hi, I'm Brian.
I'm Derica, and you're watching City Standing Brews. Today we're making an Acerglyn.
What's an Acerglyn? Glad you asked. And you and 5 million other people. I might be exaggerating slightly with the 5 million, but everyone has been asking us to make an Acerglyn, even if they didn't know what Acerglyn was. An Acerglyn is actually just a maple syrup mead, okay? Or a mead made with maple syrup. Now, a lot of people get that confused, and they think you can substitute all the honey for maple syrup. I don't think so, because the defining aspect of mead is honey, and it must be at least 50%. Now, it's just a name, but to me, if you use no honey, it can't possibly be a mead. Now you've just made maple wine, which is probably a perfectly fine product in and unto itself. But it's not a mead, and therefore it's not Acerglyn. Confused yet? Just wait. Mead is honey wine, right? So if we use something in addition to it, it adds to whatever it is. Now, it's still mead, and it's still honey wine, however you want to call it. They're actually the same thing and interchangeable, even though some people will argue that too, probably. Anyway, by adding maple syrup, it becomes a specific name called an Acerglyn, okay? If you added herbs and spices, it's a metheglyn. If you add fruit, it's a melomel. Yeah, for some reason that word wasn't coming to me.
I got your back.
Yeah, thanks. Today, we're making a 1-gallon batch, even though I'm using a 2-gallon bucket. And there's a reason. There's some stuff I'm going to be putting in here that I'm going to be putting in a bag. Yeah, that's right, I'm using a bag. Mostly just because it's easy. And that way, when I pull that bag out, I don't lose too much volume, and I still get about 1 gallon of product. To make this Acerglyn, you will need maple syrup. I prefer a good one. I actually went online and found some reviews and looked it up and did a little research, and this one came in nice. It's not super expensive. I think it was like 20 or 25 bucks. Got it off Amazon. Links will be below. The honey is actually the sweet squeeze honey that we use all the time. There'll be links to that too, and I'll show you the bottle later on. We're also going to be using Lalvin 71B yeast. Before somebody says, wow, you've been using Lalvin 71B yeast a lot. Yes, I have. You know why? I really like it. You know what else? I have an open packet, so I'm using it. My rule for yeast is half a packet for up to about 3 gallons. 3 gallons and over, use a whole packet. If you're making exactly 3 gallons, it's up to you. Anyway, also in here is about, I'm going to call that a few grams of kaffir lime leaves and the stems and twigs and everything. I did cut the thorns off because, they hurt. One of them poked my finger, and I think I'm allergic to that thing, and it just really bothers me now. It's like all itchy and burny. But anyway, all I did was I just washed them up real good and gave them a little snip with the scissors here, like that. The reason I use kaffir lime leaves is a lot of people will put citrus into an Acerglyn, and I agree, a little bit of an acidity to brighten it up a touch is kind of a nice thing. Well, I didn't have any limes or lemons or oranges handy, but I wanted to do something similar, and I happen to know that Acerglyns can be they're hard to ferment. As in, they don't taste real good for a long time. Kind of like fermenting molasses, too. It just takes an extraordinary amount of time for them to age out. And part of that is because there's probably just not a lot for the yeast to really chomp down on, meaning nutrients that they need. I don't like to use additives. I'd rather find a natural method of doing that. So I'm using 2 natural methods. One of them is rather debatable, and the other one is pretty much, it's real. The first one is kaffir lime leaves. Now, they do add a little bit of a lime, citrusy freshness and a little bit of acidity, but all those stems and leaves contain a lot of nitrogen, which is going to be accessible to the yeast, and it will actually give them something to work with, and it's a natural source. It also adds flavor. So it's not just an additive, it's a flavor component as well.
It's also going to add tannins.
And tannins. Yes, they will add lots of tannins. That was a main thing too. We wanted it to have a little bit of mouthfeel because otherwise maple syrup and honey together just sounds to me like very, very sweet. Now, before we go much further, let me go on record and say I've never actually had an Acerglyn, and I've never made one before. I did a little bit of research, found out how a lot of people did it, and I came up with my own way. And the last thing that we're going to put in is raisins. Now, this is a huge debate in the mead community. Do raisins do anything? They do a lot of things. They don't do what some people claim they do. And I've never actually claimed they are nutrient for your yeast. They're a minuscule amount. They're better than having nothing, but they're not really nutrient. What they do is add a little bit of sugar, a little bit of flavor. They give a kind of a tangy, sweet plum note to the meads. I think that'll go well with this. It'll take some of that sweetness away and give it a little bit more to work with, makes it a little more complex. They add complexity. They do add some tannins, but in general, they're really there as just a minor amount of nutrition and maybe a color enhancer. They'll make it a little bit darker. But the trick is, use a lot. We use 2 ounces or 56 grams and chop them up. If you don't chop them up, can't get to it, they don't really do a whole lot. By using a large amount like this, they're an ingredient. They're not just a threw in 5 raisins and called it nutrient. That doesn't really do anything. Anyway, so
Let's get to brewing.
alrighty. So, first thing we want to do is move this out of my way. Second is get my self-stirring cup ready. And this is just the replacement cup from a Magic Bullet blender thing. And it has these ridges on the inside so that when you... Here, watch, I'll show you. So when you put water in there, hear that sloshing? Put it up to the microphone for you. That is the water hitting the ridges, making it slosh around. That's how we mix in our yeast. And, as I said, the half-opened package of Lalvin 71B. 71B is known for bringing out fruity esters and things like that. Now, I'm using it partially out of convenience. I am not a big believer that different yeasts make things completely different. Sure, there's some differences, but
It's
overall...
more subtle nuances
it's subtle,
than big, oh, this was this type of yeast.
So, to me, I use what's handy, I use what I have, I use what I was able to get easily, and if I have an open packet, I'm going to use that up first, if at all possible, okay? I just want to not waste things. So you see, I'm just mixing that up. We're just rehydrating, getting a little water in there. This isn't technically necessary. We've learned this very recently, too, that a lot of the big-name manufacturers of yeast, they kind of do this step automatically, so there's things in there that help it, that you can just sprinkle it right on. If you watched our beer video, we actually followed the instructions and did not rehydrate. Even though the yeast said to, we didn't. So, and it worked. And I know a lot of people don't hydrate at all. I do it more out of habit than anything. Plus, I like to see it, foam up. It's fun. So, some other things that you'll want to have are a large spoon. This is my mixing spoon. It's probably twice the size that it should be. I should get another one and cut it right there. Anyway, I didn't. You will also need something to take a sample with. A wine thief works, turkey baster works. You will also want a graduated cylinder, and you will also want a hydrometer. More on those in a little while. For right now, though, what we want to do is start mixing the must, all right? In order to do that, I got to get the honey and the maple syrup into here. By the way, everything here was sanitized in...
The red bucket of sanitization!
Okay, and what that means is we put things in there, let them sit for 30 to 40 seconds, maybe a minute or two, and then take them out and let them dry on the towel. This towel is soaked in sanitizer, so, it's pretty safe. Our hands are covered in it. Everything here is fairly well sanitized. We don't go too crazy on sanitization, but it's a good idea to have a fairly good procedure and be as clean as you can be. Some people lately have said, oh, I've never sanitized. I only use water and soap and stuff. Okay, and you might get lucky for a year, 10 years, 20 years, but then you're going to ruin a brew and you'll wish that you just spent 2 minutes and sanitized. It's not that big of a deal, so it's just a good habit to get into. Anyhow, so I have my scale, I have my bucket. All right, so 1 pound of maple syrup goes in. This stuff pours a whole lot easier than honey. I was expecting it to be thick.
Tigger is being extra needy today, so...
We don't really know why.
She requires film time, apparently. So, this is Tigger.
All right, we got our 1 pound of maple syrup.
All right, you gotta go.
Which means I have some left for pancakes.
Yay!
Just put it on the shelf. Next, we will put in our honey. Now, I'm going to use a total of 3 pounds in this recipe, 1 pound being maple syrup, which smells incredible, by the way. This one's a little bit smoky. Oh, wow. Can you smell that?
Oh, yum.
So, I think we picked a good one.
This is going to be good.
All right. and 2 pounds of honey. Now this was sitting in turbos in some warm water, so it loosened up a little bit. But it is still honey, you know? Okay, so we got our 2 pounds of honey, 1 pound maple syrup, and this is the honey. It's Florida honey, sweet squeeze. We actually have links to it below. We use this stuff all the time. It's wonderful. This is like our 3rd or 4th jug of it now.
This is a wildflower honey. Another type of honey that would be good for this would be a clover honey.
Or the orange blossom, I think actually would be really nice in this too.
Particularly if you're adding a citrus note.
I was thinking about
nice.
that.
Yeah.
We didn't have any. Otherwise, I probably would have chosen the orange blossom for this. But it's fine. It'll be good. All right. At this point, I could start adding my water, right? Because I want to make about a 1 gallon batch, I put a little bit of water in here. I know I had about 3/4 of a gallon of water to start with. That way, when I add 3/4 of a gallon to this, I have roughly a gallon, you know, that sort of thing. If we have a little more, it's okay. Now, before we add anything else, I do want to give this a mix. I want to make sure all that honey and maple syrup is dissolved thoroughly. Some people will heat it to do this. I'm okay with that as long as you don't go past, say, like 115 or 120 degrees. Anything further than that, you could be hurting some of the subtleties that, let's face it, honey and maple syrup are not cheap, okay? Maple syrup especially, much more expensive than the honey. Why would you want to pay all that money and then burn off half the subtleties that make it special? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Same with honey. It is totally okay to slosh this around at this point, just so you know. Tell you what, the combination of honey and maple syrup together, the smell is incredible. It's amazing. Why is it taking us so long to make one of these?
I believe that would be your fault.
It's my fault. Don't really know why. Other than there's just so many things to do. Okay, before I take that spoon out of there, what we want to do now is get all these things together, and we're going to put them in a bag, which should be in
You
the
want
sanitizer.
to go ahead and add them before you take the reading?
Yeah, I can take a reading around the bag. Okay. Some sugars are going to leach out of the raisins, so even our original gravity is still almost an approximate. You like that term, huh?
I should make that sugar.
Closer. And we're just going to take the leaves, stick them in the bag. And these bags, you can get them at any brew shop. We'll have links to them below. Just, it's a netting material. They're not real fine, and that's a good thing for this because we're using relatively large pieces that probably won't fall through. The main reason to do it is it's easier to clean up. That's it. When we go to rack this, it's going to be a lot simpler. Now, another reason to use a bag, not necessarily for this brew, but if you have something that you know you don't want to stay in very long, like some spices and things like that that get really strong, you can put this in and take it out after a week or 2 weeks or whatever and have a lot more control. In this case, I'm probably going to leave this in here the whole time. I don't mind the raisin flavor coming through on this. I think, based on what I saw here, it's going to add to it. I think it's actually going to be really, really nice. The lime leaves, though, that's the thing that's going to kick this up, like that extra little notch. So I'm just going to put the bag right in, push it down.
Now, I know some of you are probably freaking out going, Derica, you were holding a cat just minutes ago. Well, yeah, I was. And then I was in the sanitizer and got thoroughly sanitized before I touched any of the stuff that was going on over it.
Somebody said that we have a sanitation fetish. I don't know that I'd go quite that far. I've seen other people who are way more into sanitization than we are. We just do the best we can. I mean, right now I'm breathing and talking over the must. Oh no. I'm touching things. Oh no. Let me get my robotic sanitized arm and start doing it that way. I'm also going to pitch my yeast. I don't know why they call it that, and I know I make that joke all the time, but I put this in now because see that little bit of water? That could alter the amount of sugars and density in my must, so I'm putting it in now. I'm going to rinse it out too. Get all them yeasties in there. All right, that guy's done. Mix that up real good, and I'm mixing this more now that the bag is in. I want to see if any of the sugars and stuff that were on the raisins come off. I'm hoping for somewhere around like a 1.110 to 1.120 gravity on this. Just roughly Might be a little bit lower than that, but that's about what I'm hoping for. I know that 71B goes to 14%. That'll give me a little over 14%, making for a nice sweet mead that I think the body added by the leaves and the raisins will balance out nicely.
So I got our notes here.
Here. The spoon is done.
So in our notes we have what we're making, what today's date is, what yeast we used, the amount of raisins we used, any other additives, which in this case was kaffir lime, leaves, and twigs, the pound of maple syrup, and the 2 pounds of honey.
And the capacity of an unladen African swallow.
European, not African. All right, if you got that joke, you are our people. Yay.
If you're watching this, you're our people. What are you talking about?
That's true. That's true.
Do you know how many people I run into in real life, like in the outside world, and they say, what do you do for a living? Well, one of the things that we do is we have a channel where we teach people how to make mead. Mead? What?
What? What's
They have
that?
no idea what mead is. I feel sorry for them. I educate them and then send them to our channel. Right then and there, I say, get your phone out. Let me show you. And there's a few out there right now. You know who you are. Anyway, so here we go. Well, I might have had a little bit more water. It is 1.100. Not bad. It's pretty close to where I guessed. Now, like I said, some more sugars will actually come out during the fermentation process from the raisins. So it'll actually be a little bit higher than that. Because I might have gone with 3.5 pounds total fermentables for this one. I went with 3 because of the raisins, just adding that little extra bit of sugar. Now, I had a discussion with someone in our forums the other day. Don't go looking for it because it's gone. I'll just tell you that right now. That they said pouring this in here now is wrong. It sets you up for contamination and it will alter the final flavor of your brew. I completely and wholeheartedly disagree with them. For anyone who's new to brewing, if you've sanitized, there's absolutely no harm in doing that at this point. Later on down the line, yes, it is dangerous. After fermentation is done, don't do that. It's very dangerous for making acetobacters activate and things like that. Right now, this is a must. It's very, very hard to infect this and ruin it, okay? And their argument was that there could be a bacterial infection on that, and that would ruin it. Well, yeah, if there was a bacterial infection on that, it would ruin it. And they said because starch sand doesn't get everything. They're right. But if starch sand doesn't kill that, then it doesn't kill this, and it doesn't kill this, and it doesn't kill all the other stuff that we used, making the whole point kind of moot. So I didn't really get it. Maybe I misunderstood. I don't want to really, trash anybody. But they basically said that I was completely wrong for saying that. And I just want to go on record as saying, if anyone knows why that's wrong, please tell me, because I'm not afraid to admit when we've made a mistake. But everything that I've researched, everything that I've done, the years that I've been doing this, have told me there's absolutely nothing wrong with what I just did. Okay? So, that was my rant for today. So, what's left?
Put a lid on it.
Yep. This has been sitting in the sanitizer, so it's a little drippy. Now, word on these buckets. They don't always seal the way you'd like them to. So if you're doing this in one of these type of buckets and your airlock doesn't do anything for 2 or 3 days, like it doesn't look like it's bubbling at all, you might not have a great seal. Open it up, take a look. If you see bubbles going in there, just little tiny bubbles spritzing, it's working. Don't worry about it. I don't generally get too crazy about it. I know the idea behind a lid in the airlock is to keep bugs out. Well, the little teeny tiny air that's getting through there is not going to let bugs in. So I'm not worried about it. It's not a big deal. Also, in your airlock, make sure to use sanitizer water or some sort of alcohol. Vodka's good. I use an old cheap scotch that I hate, but now I have to save some because on our Whiskey Wednesdays, we're going to actually taste it. So you guys get to find out what one it is. I just thought that'd be hysterical. So what you do is you fill it to the fill line, which is about there. And what happens is the gases from fermentation, the CO2 and other things, push up through here, push down. This side will go totally down. This side will go totally up. Bubbles will start coming through. Use the lid. Some people don't use the lid. And that's exactly how bugs can get in here. Sure, little fruit flies can crawl through the lid. But you know what? Bigger stuff can get in when you don't use that. Something big enough gets in there and clogs it, you may have a problem. Like as in a bomb. The other thing some people do is I've heard they take a little bit of a coffee filter and put it in there, and that prevents bugs from coming through at all, and I thought that was kind of neat. You still want an airlock, though, because it prevents bacterial bugs from getting in. Also things you just don't want in here. And just fit it to the grommet in your lid. If you do not have any of these items, we do sell them in our store through Amazon. We get a small commission. Doesn't cost you guys anything extra. We are Amazon affiliates. All the links will be below or in our store. This will now go under my desk or someplace cool and dark. When I say cool and dark, between 65 and 75 degrees is pretty much your ideal temperature. Celsius will be here because I don't know it off the top of my head. And dark. Now, if you're using something opaque like this, sunlight isn't going to hurt it that bad, but you don't want it sitting in direct sun. You actually want it just indoors, somewhere semi-dark. So how long? I know in past videos we've actually said, oh, after 2 weeks I did this, or after 3 weeks I did this. What I didn't say, and I probably should have, is that we took a measurement and found out that it was finished. The easiest way is wait a reasonable amount of time. I mean, in this case, I'm probably going to wait like a month, 4 weeks or so, and then take a reading. Wait a week more, take another reading. If those two numbers don't change, now it's done. People have this misconception that racking should be done as soon as possible. That's not true at all, okay? The only time you do that is if you have something in there that you want to remove. Like in this case, it's possible that those leaves will overpower this. I don't think so. I didn't put a lot in. They're chopped really big. They should be fine. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to use my senses and give it a smell in a couple weeks. If it smells like lime leaves, I know I went too far, and I'm going to remove that bag. I would like the raisins to stay in the whole time, so, I'm going to have to temper that. But how long? There's really no right answer to that. I know maple syrup takes a little bit more to ferment, so I'm going to leave this for 4 weeks or so before I worry about it. But if I waited 2 months and then took a reading, there's no harm. There's no reason to not leave it on the lease for a couple of months, okay? Many people say, I make a mead, let it sit for 6 months, then I touch it. Yeah, it makes sense. There's a big thing about people say it changes the flavors of the mead if you leave it on the lease too long, and that's true. But the question is, how long is too long? For meads and wines, it's like upwards of 9 to 10 months before you start seeing a noticeable difference. Notice I said noticeable. That doesn't mean drastic. It just means noticeable. And it could be longer. I mean, people have done it 2-3 years and not had any problems. For beer, slightly different story, but that's a whole other video. We're starting to run a little bit long here.
So while it's waiting for it to do its thing, at the beginning, Brian is going to give it a stir, and he's going to demonstrate what that means.
Notice,
that's it.
The lid didn't come off. Nothing. I might do that for like 20-30 seconds. It's good for the arms too. What that does is a couple things. First, it gets everything agitated, lets liquid get to that bag and the leaves in case anything started to settle. It kicks up the yeast again that settled to the bottom, so maybe it'll reactivate if it didn't, or, there's all kinds of things that are happening there. Essentially, it's just kicking everything back up into suspension. The other thing it's doing is removing the CO2 gas, okay? It's called degassing because, well, nobody likes to swim in their own waste, and that is the waste product of the yeast. That will slow down your fermentation, and I have noticed that doing that for like the first week, maybe 2 weeks, does actually speed up the fermentation process, makes it a little bit cleaner. The smell coming out of there is just a little bit sweeter and cleaner all along the way. That, to me, says that's a good thing to do. Beyond 2 weeks, don't do it anymore. There's too much of a chance of oxidization, and you want that yeast and yeast to settle to the bottom and pack nice and tight so that when you do rack this, it comes out nice and clean. So, if you like this video, give us a like. If you want to see more of what we're up to, hit subscribe. And if you want to help out the channel and become a part of our VIP group on Facebook, several of our tiers on Patreon allow you to do just that. Links below and right there. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.